Welcome to a Minecraft add-on tutorial video. In this episode, we're going to be learning how to make a player sleep pack that allows the player to pass the time of day any time of day, which is a strange pack to put out when Mojang have literally just released that in the next minor update, we're going to be getting percentage player sleep. But that still only allows you to pass the time at night. This will allow you to pass the time any time of day, which is good. So, a little bit of background before we get started. The reason this series is cropped up is, if you don't know already, I do a podcast every week called the Block Update Podcast with Slack Lizard, and every week we get people writing in with wishes for what we're in the game. And we've accumulated quite a long list of wishes, and I've gone through every single one of those, worked out which ones I think will be possible to turn into an add-on or resource pack, and I thought, why not make them? And not just make them, but show you how to make them so you can learn how to make them as well. So that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to start by jumping into the game and taking a look at how this works. So clearly I've already made this pack because I needed to do the prep work in order to make it, so I knew how to make it. And all that's going to happen is you're going to be in a world that's, well, it's noon at the minute. You're going to click on a bed. It's going to tell you the current time of the day, which is midday, and it's going to give you a bunch of options. Do you want to rest till morning, rest till evening, or rest till midnight, so you can sleep until nighttime? If I click rest till midnight, the camera's going to fade out. It's going to tell me good night, and I'm going to wake up and it's going to be midnight. So if I click on the bed again, it's going to tell me that it's nighttime. It's going to give me different options. Do I just want to sleep like normal and pass the time like I would normally do in Minecraft? Do I want to rest till morning, rest till midday, or rest till evening? So let's rest till the evening. Let's do that. It'll say that I'm resting till the evening. It'll say good evening. And if we look at the sun, it is now currently sunset. Now, I have currently got the daylight cycle on false. If I turn that on true, we will see the sun start to go down. And if I click on the bed again, it's going to say, when do I want to rest? And so on and so forth. So this is using the beta API system, and there are a couple of little janky things going on because they've been fiddling with how players sleep in order to bring in the percentage player sleep game rule, which will be available in the next update. So even though it should pop up the menu when I click on the bed at night, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll just put me in the bed, which means it's going to sleep the night normally. And if there are other players on the server, then you're not going to sleep. And then it pops up the menu after I've slept, which is not ideal. But, you know, we work with what we've got. If you want to sleep during the day, it works absolutely perfectly. So let's rest till the morning, from the morning, which is kind of weird. But there we go. And it's now sunrise. The sun is going up. So let's build this thing. How hard could it be? So we're going to be using the beta API system for this. And if you want to check out all of the official documentation, you can go to learn.microsoft.com/ENUS, Minecraft Creator, Script API, Minecraft Server, Minecraft Server. Or check out the link in the description below, and this will give you all of the details on all of this sort of stuff. And because we're using the beta API system, we are going to be using the experimental version of that, which means it will change and break in the next update. So be prepared to be fiddling with things until this comes out of experimental. Once you got your head around all of that, you need to then actually create a folder where this pack is going to be going, and it's going to be a behavior pack. And if you go into your Minecraft Bedrock directory, you should be presented with a whole bunch of options or folders like this. And we're going to be working with the development behavior packs folder, because if you use that and you put your packs in there, then they won't get cached by the game and you can edit them and keep using them. So as you can see, I've already got a folder which was my prep folder. I've created this folder here, which is the one we're going to be using inside of the development behavior packs folder, and I am going to be using Visual Studio Code in order to actually code this thing, because it's a really handy piece of software to do that. And I do have some extensions actually added into this thing that's going to make my life a little bit easier. So if I search the extensions marketplace for Minecraft, you'll see that I have a bunch on here, including block sections, Minecraft Bedrock development, which is absolutely vital. And there's a whole bunch of other ones in here you can add as well. So going into our sleep anytime folder, there's nothing in there. The first thing we're going to need is a manifest JSON file. So I'm just going to create that and open that up. And now I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to the one that I've already made, put it on half the screen there, get rid of that so I can see it. And I'm just going to copy and paste it into here. That's the easiest time to do it. I'm going to change a couple of things. Obviously, this is not the prep file anymore. It is just sleep anytime. I've put EX there just to show that this is an experimental pack. You don't have to do that. I'm going to change the UUID, and I've got a handy keyboard shortcut to do that, which is from another extension. If I hold Shift, Alt, and G, it will give me a new UUID, which means this pack will be unique. The minimum engine version is 1.20 because that's the version we're working in, and this here is the most important thing that we're going to be looking at. We've got, this is what's going to allow us to actually use the beta API tool, and you can pretty much copy and paste that from what I've got here. And below that, these are also very important as well. These are the dependencies. And the current version of the Minecraft server and Minecraft server UI from the beta APIs on 1.20.10 that I'm going to be working on is 1.4.0 beta and 1.2.0 beta. And if we just hop back over to the learn.microsoft.com website quickly and scroll down, you'll see that the available versions for the Minecraft server are these. And it's actually listing 1.5.0 as the beta and 1.4.0 as stable, but that's because this is actually based on the Minecraft preview rather than the stable release, because they just couldn't make it more complicated if they try. So that's the Minecraft server. We're also going to be using the Minecraft server UI in order to create the form or the menu that pops up, and if we click on that one and scroll down, you'll see the similar sort of thing here. We've got 1.2.0 beta is the current one available in the preview, but we're not in the preview, we're in stable release, so we're actually having 1.1.0 beta. However, going back to Visual Studio Code, you'll actually see that we've got 1.2.0 beta for the server UI because the people that do the documentation just don't make life easy. So this is actually up to date for the server UI for the current version of the game, but if you go to the server one, this is actually up to date for the preview version of the game. So it's a whole mess, but you'll learn like I did. And that's why I'm here to teach you. So once you've got your manifest file saved and you've got your unique UUID in there and you've got all of this other junk in here, save that. And then we're going to need another file. In fact, we're going to need another folder. So we're going to click on our folder here. And we're going to go to new folder. We're going to call it scripts. And inside of that new folder, we're going to make a new file. And we're going to call it index.js. Very simple. And if you look at our manifest, it shows here that the scripts/js is basically our starting file. So this is what the manifest is telling the game to look for to find our scripts. Now, the first thing we're going to need to import is the actual server and server UI stuff from Mojang. And again, I'm just going to do some copy and paste in here because I have that available to me. So let's open up the one I've already done. Let's close that so I can see a bit better. And let's grab these. So these are import commands. This is all written in JavaScript. And you've basically got import, and we're using the world and system parts of the Minecraft server. And we're using the action form data of the Minecraft server UI. And just to give you an idea, the server is basically the stuff that allows you to control entities and get information, and the server UI is just for creating forms in the game, or UI elements, which is what we're going to be using. If you're wanting to take part in this video and run through it with me and check out the files I've done, all of this stuff is going to be available on FoxyNoTail.com. If you come to content and then go down to how to, you'll see I have a bunch of these tutorial videos already. It's going to be in here. It's not yet because I haven't done it yet, but you'll be able to go to it and download the tutorial files once this video is live. And while you're fiddling about going to websites and all that sort of good stuff, why don't you go down and hit that like button for me and maybe consider subscribing for more videos like this. And the first thing we're going to need to do is actually detect when a player clicks on a bed. And there's a bunch of ways we can do that. So in order to detect what happens in the game, there are world events. So back on the documentation, we're going to scroll all the way down on the left-hand side here, all the way down to, if we can find it, world. And in world, you have after events, which are events that fire after an action has been done. And you have before events, which are events that fire before an event has taken place, such as someone writing something in the chat. Before it actually sends that information to the server, you can hook into it. Or before someone places a block. If they've gone to place a block, you can hook into it before they've actually placed it. But we're not going to be using before events, we're going to be using after events. And the sorts of events that we can look at that have happened after something has happened, if that makes sense, are block breaking, blocks exploding, blocks being placed, buttons being pushed, chat being sent, and a whole bunch of other things. And the one we're going to be most interested in today is item start use on. And the reason we're going to be using item start use on is because they broke item use on. So item use on used to fire every time the player tried to interact with something, even if they didn't have an item in their hand. So if I was looking at this grass block here and clicking on it, I would be able to hook into that and fire an event. But unfortunately, they changed it so it only actually works now if you're actually holding an item. And it doesn't matter what item it is, but it detects that item being used. Now, in order to detect someone using an item when they don't have an item in their hand, you have to use item start use on. And that's how we're going to detect ourselves clicking on the bed. And I'm sure at some point they'll change this so it doesn't detect it when you've got an empty hand, but I hope they don't because it's actually really useful. So if we go into this and go into this, and keep clicking through, we can see that we could subscribe to this event, and the sorts of things it's going to give us in return are what block we've clicked on, the block face we've clicked on, the item stack, so the item we're holding when we're clicking on something, and the source, which is the player. So in order to hook into those after events, we need a constant. We're going to call this after events. Now you can call that whatever you want. I'm just going to call it that because it's nice and easy, and that's going to equal world, which is pulling from here, and then dot after events. So that's going to grab all of the events that happen after they've happened from the world. And now we need to hook into the item start use on event specifically. So we're going to do after events dot item start use on, because that's the one we want, dot subscribe, and then we need to pull the data from this. So we're going to do 2 brackets data, and then we're going to run that into a function, and we're going to close our braces there. So now we've got a function that's going to fire every time a player clicks on a block. So we need to know what block that is. So we're going to do const block equals data dot block player equals data dot source. So the source of the thing that is clicking on the block is the player, and the thing they clicked on is the block. Now we're not interested in what item they've got in their hand, so we don't need that information. And now we need to determine if the block they've clicked on is a bed. So we're going to do if block dot type ID, and that's the type of block that it is, equals Minecraft bed. Then we want to show that player a form. So we're going to do show form, and that can be called anything you want. It doesn't have to be show form. That's just a function name, and we're going to put in player there, and that is that little bit done. So every time a player clicks on a bed, it's going to show them a form, but it's not, because we haven't actually made the form yet. So we need to do that. So we need a function, and we're going to call it show form, so it matches this. So whatever you called your function here, it needs to match this one here, and we're going to send the player information through there. And now we need some form data from here, the server UI thing. So we're going to do const form data equals new action form data, and now we can build the form. So coming back to the documentation, we're using action form. So we need to check out what we can do with this. And for this, we can use a body, a button, a show, and a title. So the body is basically some text that starts at the top of the form. The title obviously will be the title of the form, and we can add as many buttons as we want to that. So let's do this. So first thing we're going to do is give this a title. So we're going to do form data dot title, and we can call this whatever we want, and we're just going to call it sleep. And then the body is just going to be a little bit of text, and we're going to call that body rest till ... and then we can add in our buttons. Now you can see from the pack that I've got on the right, it's actually quite complex. We're going to start easy and then build up to that. So we're just going to build a bunch of buttons. So we're going to do form data dot button, and we're going to call this normal sleep, and then that will eventually run a function that when the player sleeps on the bed normally, it's just going to act totally like normal. So now all I've done is copy and pasted that a few times, and have changed the labels for the buttons. So we've got one for rest till morning, till midday, till evening, and midnight. And now we need to show that form to the player. So we're going to do form data dot show, and then player. So that's going to show this form to that player. And then we want to actually know what happens when the player clicks on it. So we need to do then, and then we're going to run another function. So then gives us a response, which we then grab from a function. We're going to close that off there, and all of the stuff that happens in here is happening after that player has interacted with the form. So if the player just quits out of the form and doesn't actually interact with it, we need to handle that. So we're going to do if response.cancelled. So that basically means if that's true, we're just going to return, which means just don't do anything, basically. We've finished, we're done. But then we need to actually determine which button they've clicked on if they don't cancel out of it. And the way that we get that information is from response selection. So response selection will be from 0 to however many of these you've got. So this will be response selection 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll know which one they've clicked on by which number this is. For instance, if I do if response selection is 0, I know that they've clicked on normal sleep. So let's just push that into the game so we can see that. So we're going to do console.warn. Now in JavaScript, you would normally do console log, but that doesn't actually do anything unless you're using the login system inside of Minecraft, which doesn't print to the screen. It just pushes it to a log, which is very difficult to access. If we do console warn, that will actually show us on screen what's happening, and we're just going to put normal sleep We're going to close that off and let's run this. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to save that, go back into Minecraft. I'm going to save and quit out of here, and we're going to create a new world. So let's create a new world. We're going to call it Sleep Anytime. I'm going to put it in creative, set it to peaceful, just so we're not having to worry about things trying to get us. I'm not worried about any of the advanced stuff. I want to turn multiplayer off so no one joins me while I'm recording this video, and I'm going to turn cheats on. I'm going to turn mob spawning off because we don't really want mobs kicking about. I'm going to leave everything else as it is. Oh, in fact, I'm going to turn the weather off just so we're not having to deal with rain and stuff while I'm recording the video. And then we're going to go to experiments. And the one we're going to need here is beta API. So let's turn that one on. And then we need to add our new behavior pack, which is Sleep Anytime. Not my prep one that I've already done. This is the one we're working on here. We're going to activate that. Click on create. And hopefully we won't get any errors as this loads up, which we didn't. And you might have problems with your pack, but not be getting any errors yourself. So you need to make sure that in your settings, in Creator, you have Enable Content Log GUI. And that's going to allow you to actually see any errors with your pack or things like that that's going on in game. So if I grab myself a bed and I put that down somewhere and I click on it, it's going to give me that form that I did. And if I click on normal sleep, it should say at the top, there we go, warning, normal sleep. So that's that thing I asked it to do. However, if I click on something else, it's not going to do anything because we haven't done that yet. But there we go. That bit's working. So let's plumb in the rest of the stuff, shall we? So what do we want to do when the player clicks on these things? Well, let's not worry about when they're just doing a normal sleep because we don't need to do anything for that at the moment. So let's just put return in there. Let's actually focus on what we're going to do if they've picked a different one. Now we could use a switch statement like I've got in here, which we'll get to later. But right now we're just going to use if statements because they're nice and simple. So if the response selection is 1, that's when they've rested till morning. How are we going to set the time to morning? Well, that's pretty easy. We do world set time of day. And then we put the time of the day in ticks to what time of day it is. And morning in Minecraft is 1000. Let's copy and paste this a couple of times. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we've got morning, midday, evening, and midnight. Midday is 6000. I know this because it's actually in the documentation. Jumping back over to the documentation, there's a thing here that says time of day, and it tells you what time of day each one is. So noon is 6000, sunset's 12,000, night is 13,000, midnight's 18,000, sunrise is 23,000, and day is 1000. So let's plumb these in. So if they're going to be going to evening, well, that's going to be 12,000. That's when sunset is, and then midnight is at 18,000. And there we go. So now if we save that and shoot back over to Minecraft, we don't even need to quit the game. We can just do / reload, and that's going to reload all of those scripts, which is fantastic because we don't have to keep closing and opening the game. So now if I click on rest till midday, did it do anything? Well, the sun's at the top, so I guess so. Rest till evening, and there we go. The sun should now be in the sunset position. Rest till morning, the sun should be in the sunrise position, and rest till midnight, it's now midnight. So it's a bit janky because it's, you know, not really doing a great deal else for us, but it is working. And if I click on normal sleep, well, it's not going to do anything. If I click on midnight and then click on normal sleep, it'll let me sleep. So it's working. It's doing exactly what we need it to do. But I want it to be better than that, you know? So let's make it better. First of all, I don't want it to give us all of these options. If it's already morning, I don't want it to say rest till morning. I want it to say rest till midday, evening, or midnight. I also don't want normal sleep because I can't even do that in the morning. So we need to get the world time in order to determine what time of day it is. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new constant called time, and we're going to do equals world get time of day. And that will put the time of day in ticks, which is equivalent to these ones here, into this time constant there. So now we need to actually work out what time it is in terms of a text string. So it makes life nice and easy for us. So now instead of doing a constant, I'm going to do let. So a constant is fixed. If I've got time there, I can't then write time here and then change it because that's a constant. It won't let me. Whereas if I do let and then a variable, let current time, I can change that as many times as I want after I've defined it. And I'm just going to put is morning by default. Now, it's not always going to be morning because it depends on the time of day. So now I need some if statements to determine what time of day it is. And I've already got those written down here. So if the time is greater or equal to 5,000 and less than 9,000, we're going to consider it as midday. If the time is greater than equal to 9,000 and less than 13,000, we're going to consider it evening. And if the time is greater than equal to 13,000 or less than 1,000, notice there's an or here instead of an and because we're on the other side of the 24,000 ticks in a day. we're going to consider it night. So now, depending on what time of day it is going to tell us whether it's morning, midday, evening, or night, and that way we can determine which buttons we're going to give it. So let's update our form title and our body now that we've got this data. We can say in our body, instead of rest till, we're going to put something else. And instead of using quotes, I'm actually going to use this symbol, which I have no idea what it's called. It's not an apostrophe. It's the one that's on the button on your keyboard above tab and left of the one. I don't know what it's called. I've no idea, but we're going to use that because that's very helpful to us. So we can put current time, and then we can do a $, open curly braces, close curly braces, and in the middle of those, we're going to do current time. And that's going to grab that text there and put it in there. So when we open our form, the title of the form is still going to be sleep, but it's going to tell us the current time on there. And now we can use some more if statements to determine which buttons we're going to give ourselves. So we only want the normal sleep if it's at night time. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of copy and pasting here, guys, because I'm a bit of a cheater. I'm going to do if current time is night, then we're going to allow ourselves to have that button there. If it's not morning, then we're going to allow ourselves to have the rest till morning button. If it's not midday, we're going to have the rest till midday button, and so on and so forth until we've got all of our buttons surrounded by if statements, so it only gives us the one that we need. So let's save that again. Go back over to Minecraft, reload it. Now when we click on the bed, you'll see there's a lot less things. We don't have the normal sleep one because it's not nighttime, and it's midday at the moment, so we don't have the midday one. So we've got morning, evening, or midnight. If I click on midnight, it's not doing anything anymore. Oh, geez. I wonder why it's not doing anything, peeps. Did we break it? Well, yes, we did. And the reason it's broken is because down here, we're relying on those buttons being in order, and they're no longer in order. If we don't have normal sleep or rest till midnight, then our 0 and our 4 has gone, and rest till morning is now 0, and that's 1 and that's 2, instead of that being 1, 2, and 3. So now we need to actually figure out which buttons are available and which aren't. So we're going to do that by creating an array. So we're going to do a new let variable, and we're going to call it form buttons, and we're just going to do equals square brackets, close brackets, and that sets up an empty array. And now for each of these buttons, if they exist, we're going to push some data into that array, and we're going to use this later on to make our lives easier. So I'm just going to copy and paste that for each one of these, and then I'm going to change these so that they match. And notice these are not capitalized, whereas those ones are. Not that that really matters, but it just makes life a little easier. So now we know if there are only 3 buttons being given to us, the button numbers will be the same as what's in the array, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, but it doesn't matter. So coming away from our buttons for a second and going back into our response area, we now know that the correct response will be the form buttons and then the response selection. And that will give us things like default morning, midday, evening, and midnight based on which button was clicked. Form buttons response selection is this text here for whichever button's been clicked. So now we can create a switch instead of a load of if statements just to make our lives easier, as I've done here already. And we're going to do switch form buttons response selection. So it's going to basically say if this then that, but with a switch. And the first case is default, because that's the first one we've got of here. So if the default button was clicked, we're going to do something, and we don't need to do anything at the moment. So let's just return, and then we need to break that to get out of that switch. If we don't put a break in there, it's going to use that and then continue to the next one. The next case is morning, because that's the next one we've got here. So if they've clicked on the morning button, we're going to do this, and we're going to put our time of days and things back in here like we did before. Oh, and I've put curly braces in there. I didn't mean to do that. That was stupid. And now I've got a case for every single one of my buttons. I can save that, come back to the game and reload it. And now when I click on this, it should actually do the things I needed to do. So there we go. It's midnight, it's morning, it's evening, it's morning, it's midnight. So that works. Lovely. But we want it to be even better than that. So the first thing I want it to do is I want it to tell the other players in the game that someone is in bed when they go to bed. And the way we can do that is we can send commands from the player. So if I copy and paste this here, or if we just start a whole new one, if the player does a default sleep, we can do player run command. Now you can leave it as that, or you can do async, and that means it will run asynchronously, which means it's not going to be locking up your game waiting for things to process. It will do it in its own time, which is absolutely fine for this because it's not essential. And then we can write something in there, a command to be run, and we want to give them a title command. We want something to pop up on their action bar, so we'll do title, at A, that's all players, action bar, and that will force a title to their action bar, and we're going to do the curly braces again with the $sign in front, player.name. So this is the player that's currently interacting with the bed. So that person's name is in bed. Simple. So now when that player clicks on a bed and then clicks to do the default normal sleep, it's going to tell all of the other players in the world that that player is in bed. And we could copy and paste that for every single one of these things, or the easiest way of doing that is we'll just grab that and we'll put it outside of the switch function, and that means that's going to just tell everybody the player's in bed regardless of which one they've clicked on. And now we want it to greet the player, and we can do the same sort of thing. So let's copy and paste that. When they wake up in the morning, we want it to say good morning, so we can do player run command async title at S this time. That's the actual person or the player that's clicking on the bed. Action bar, good morning. And that will say good morning when they get out of bed. And we can copy and paste that for every single one of these and change it as well. But why would we do that? When that's 4 different things all doing the same thing, we can make that much easier for ourselves just by making a function. So let's come down to the bottom here and make a new function. And we're going to call it greet player. And we want the player that we're going to be greeting, and we want some text that it's going to put in that title. And we're going to just copy and paste what we've already written here. So we've got player run command async title at S. That's the player that we're actually talking to. Action bar good. And then we're going to change this here to text. So it's going to pull from that text, and we're going to send that text from this. So instead of having all this stuff here, we're going to get rid of these, and we're just going to put in that function greet player, put the player in there, and then put what text we want to say. So they've slept till morning, so we want to say good morning. So when this fires this function, it's going to come down here and it'll say good and then morning. So now we can copy and paste this one for each of these. That's going to save us a bunch of code. And we're going to do good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Simple. What else do we want to do? Well, let's just check this works first, shall we? So back to the game, click on reload, click on the bed, and if I do rest till morning, it says good morning. And if I click on midnight, it says good night. And if I click on midday, it says good afternoon. This is wonderful. It works perfectly, but it's still not quite right. It's a little bit instant for my liking. I don't like how instant it is. Now, we can't force the player to actually get in the bed during the day. That's against the rules, guys. Mojang won't allow it. It's not possible. It probably is if you've spent absolutely ages doing animations and all that sort of stuff. But we're not going to do that. We're going to cheese it a little bit, but make it look and feel a whole bunch better. And in order to do that, we need to come out of this game. We need to go back to our world, and we're going to enable another experiment, and we're going to enable the experimental cameras experiment. We're going to go back in the world, and it's not going to affect a thing. It's going to be absolutely fine. And the reason we're going to enable the camera experiment is because we can now run camera commands, such as camera at S for ourself, fade, and then we put time, and then 111. And the camera will fade out our screen and then bring it back again, almost like we cut to a different time of day. So now we want that to happen when we click on one of those buttons, so it fades out and fades in again like we've slept. So let's do that. So now what we can do up here, when we're actually telling all of the other players the player is in bed, we're going to do player, run command async, camera, at S, fade, time, 111, and there we go. Simple as that. All we need to do now is go back to the game, reload it again. Now when we click on one of these things, it's going to fade out and fade back in again. And if we sleep till morning, it's going to fade out and it's going to fade back in again. And we're going to fade out and we're going to fade back in again. Doesn't that look a whole bunch better than it did? But what can happen here is a bit of a problem, because we're technically fading out. If I set this till midnight, you'll notice it'll go dark before it actually fades out. So it's actually set the time before we fully faded out, and we don't want that. So we just need to delay that time changing a little bit. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come back to the top here, and we're going to use this system part that we imported earlier. So the system is basically part of the Minecraft server that allows you to run things from the system, I guess. And what we want to do with our response is we don't want to do any of this until after a little while. So we're going to come up here, we're going to make ourselves some space, and we're going to do system run timeout, which is a little bit like JavaScript set timeout, but it's run timeout. And we're going to do open and close brackets because we don't need any data. And we're going to run that into a function, and we're going to wrap this entire switch thing inside of this function here. And then after that, we're going to do a comma, and we're going to set how many ticks we want to wait before that actually runs. And 20 ticks is 1 second. That should be absolutely fine because our fade in time is 1 second. Close the brackets, close that, save it, go back to Minecraft, reload it, click on the bed, click rest till midnight. It's going to fade out, and then it's going to change while the camera is faded. And there we go. That is that little pack pretty much done. So coming back here, there are a couple of things I did slightly differently in my original version, but the outcome is exactly the same. So we can get rid of that now. We have finished. With just 96 lines of code, we have created a full system that allows the player to sleep through any time of day. And of course, you've also inadvertently created one player sleep with this as well, because it doesn't matter how many players are on the server. If one of them clicks on the bed and says rest till evening, it's going to rest till evening. So there we go. Job done. So I really hope you enjoyed that video and found it useful. And if you did, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing for more similar videos in the future. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.